The PicoRecorder is an all-in-one 32-bit float audio recorder and 6-channel wireless microphone receiver. In fact, that's what you're hearing throughout this entire episode. My transmitter is just right here, and we're recording this right here on the PicoRecorder. It is also able to take in wired connections from 2 different sources, so 2 different lavalier microphones perhaps, or maybe a feed from a mixing board. And it records all of those up to a total of 10 tracks, including a stereo mix in one device. So it's a mixer, it's a recorder, it's a wireless receiver, and it's a basic timecode generator, all in one little package here. Full disclosure, PicoGear sent this to me free of charge, so I have not paid for this with my own money. However, they have not paid me any money aside from providing this for this review. They have not told me what to say. They have not reviewed this video prior to posting. And this video is brought to you by Learn Light and Sound. We have courses teaching you how to make better sound and lighting for your courses. Link down below. Okay. PicoGear approaches things a little bit differently than a lot of the other consumer wireless microphone systems out on the market, like the Rode Wireless Pro or the DJI Mic 3. Instead of recording at the transmitter, the PicoRecorder records at the receiver in 32-bit float. So this is, as far as I'm aware, the first consumer wireless microphone system that actually transmits 32-bit float audio. I could be wrong on that, but it's the first one I've used. So that's pretty cool. So you might ask yourself, well, what if the signal drops and you're not recording at the transmitter, you're recording at the receiver? Well, yeah, that could be a problem. However, I have found that for most audio for video recording scenarios, this transmits just far enough and it does just fine. I'm not having problems with dropouts in situations certainly like this, but even in our distance test, which we'll talk about in a little bit, it'd be pretty rare to drop your signal. So how does this system transmit 32-bit float audio, you might ask? And according to PicoGear, each PicoMic samples the audio in 32 bits directly and sends it in 32-bit float to the receiver, thanks to the PicoGear X32 wireless technology. So they have their own kind of modulation scheme. No gain is applied at the PicoMic itself. Instead, you get the raw signal and it is sent to the PicoRecorder and then you gain it up there. So it's doing some really interesting things. So you don't have to worry generally about clipping your audio, certainly for dialogue audio. There's a great in-depth user guide over at PicoGear, so if you want to really nerd out about those details, head on over there and you can download that for free. Let's first get you a sample of the PicoMic 3 Pro into the PicoRecorder versus the Rode Wireless Pro. It was easier to know it than to explain why I know it. If you were asked to prove that 2 and 2 made 4, you might find some difficulty, and yet you're quite sure of the fact. It was easier to know it than to explain why I know it. If you were asked to prove that 2 and 2 made 4, you might find some difficulty, and yet you are quite sure of the fact. Now again, this entire episode is recorded with the PicoMic 3 Pro, and we're not doing any processing in post. And the reason we're just normalizing to -23 LUFS, sort of a standardized level. The reason we're not doing any processing is so you can hear exactly what it sounds like directly out of the recorder itself. So you can really assess what you're getting out of the box, and then you can, of course, post-process it and fine-tune it from there. All right, let's run through some of the features, and let's kind of start with the pros. From my perspective, you get a 2.8-inch touchscreen that works nicely. It also has haptic feedback, which is pretty nice as well. Simple menus that are really easy to operate, and you can see decently on the screen outdoors. 2 3.5mm mono inputs that can also supply 3 volts plug-in power. So if you're going to use lavalier microphones directly into the recorder, you can do that as well. The headphone output works fine with any headphones that are less than 80 ohms in my experience. You're not going to use your audiophile headphones, 300 ohm headphones with this, so just be aware of that. And it records to a full-size SD card, SDHC or SDXC, right on the side here. The transmitters, the PicoMic 3 Pros, are tiny and they're light and they're much less intrusive than most other consumer wireless mic systems, looking at you, Rode in particular, and also you, DJI. Interestingly, the mic capsule itself is on the clip, so you actually put the bigger piece is kind of hidden behind clothing, typically, and then the mic is on the clip itself. So that's really kind of an innovative design. I think they've done a nice job there. The entire kit can be charged together all at once in its case with USB-C. PicoGear has made this to be firmware updatable, so it's a design that they can grow over time. That's actually the case, but with a lot of these now, a lot of them are firmware updatable, but that's also partly what they're doing here. PicoMic 3 Pro here sounds pretty good to my ear for dialogue recording, which is kind of my main focus. And you be the judge of it yourself. You're hearing it right now. There is some latency. It's a digital wireless microphone system. There is some latency, and it is a fair bit of latency. It's 18 milliseconds. So that's good or bad depending on how you look at it. I think it's going to be fine for most. It's slightly more latency than some of the other systems like the Rode Wireless Pro, but the trade-off is that when you have a little bit more latency, you give the system a bit more time to recover from errors and prevent dropouts. So it adds a little bit more in terms of the robustness of the signal, but it does take a little bit longer. Now, to put that in context, that's less than 1 frame at every practical video frame rate we use, so you shouldn't have any sort of sync issues. So take that for what you will. For some people, that'll be a big deal. For other people, that'll be like, cool, it's no problem. You're seeing it right now. We sync this in post to the camera footage. All right, how does it do in terms of distance? If you're in line of sight, we were able to get 125 meters. That's where we stopped. We probably could have gotten more, but as long as the transmitter is on the front of you, facing the camera with the transmitter or the receiver up on top of the camera, 125 meters plus, no problem. Outdoors with nothing to bounce off of, that's amazing. When it's not in line of sight, in other words, if you turn away from the receiver, we got our first dropout at about 40 meters. That's actually better than a lot of other systems that I've used, so good performance there as well. Indoor, in our house here, I walked throughout the entire home with all the 6 transmitters on, and we did not have any dropouts no matter where I went. I went about through 2 doors, up onto the 2nd floor, no dropouts whatsoever. So it does a really good job of holding onto the signal. And what's interesting is that when we were outdoors and we did start getting those dropouts at 40 meters when we were facing away from the camera, at first they don't sound exactly like the typical dropouts you find on most other wireless systems where everything completely drops out. It almost just kind of got staticky at first, like it was still getting some of the packets through. Not necessarily usable, but it's interesting how it responds. It does a good job. It is a 32-bit float wireless, and again, the first of which I'm aware, and it records at 48 kilohertz. So if you're planning to do sound design and you wanted to record at 192 kilohertz, this is not the system for you. How does it do in terms of powering time? Now, first of all, I'm going to cover this a little bit in the cons section. It does have inbuilt batteries that are not user replaceable. We'll come back to that. And you might be asking Curtis why you're reviewing that again. We'll come back to that. But the transmitter can go up to 20 hours if you're within 2 meters of the receiver, which is a lot of interview type situations. It's going to be somewhere around there. About 10 hours if you're within 10 meters of the receiver. And it really depends on the situation and how much other 2.4 gigahertz traffic, Wi-Fi, and other consumer electronic stuff there is in the space. The receiver goes about 12 hours, usually on 1 battery charge, and they can both charge within about an hour and a half. So they charge quite quickly, an hour to an hour and a half. You can also power both the transmitter and the receiver via their USB-C ports, even while you're using them. So you can go for a very long time. With the transmitters on the PicoMic 3 Pro, it does come with a little adapter, a USB-C to 3.5 millimeter adapter that allows you to use external lavalier microphones. So for some people, that's really important. Can do that. And to pair the transmitters with the receiver, you just connect them via USB cable, and they pair it up. And then every time you turn on both of them in the future, they're automatically paired and good to go. I also found that it's really nice that when you have them in the charging case, they won't connect. But as soon as you take one of them out, it will automatically, now you saw the LED come on, now it's connected. So it's really, really simple and easy to use. A few cons or notes about things. As I mentioned before, inbuilt batteries that are not user replaceable. However, before I reviewed this, I talked to Laurent at PicoGear, and he said that they will replace them. So if you run into an issue where your batteries no longer hold a charge, if it's within warranty, of course, they'll exchange it. But if it's out of warranty, they will replace it for a charge. I don't know how much they would charge you, but you can get it replaced. Second thing, timecode implementation serves one specific timecode use case from what I can tell, and that is the receiver, its output, 3.5 millimeter output, will send linear timecode to your camera. So the idea there is then, rather than recording well, you can also record the audio from one channel and timecode on the other channel from the receiver to the camera. The purpose there is that then you can have the 32-bit float audio that was recorded on the PicoRecorder. You can use all that in post and then sync it up to your video. That's the use case that it supports. So it's a little bit more limited in terms of how you can integrate this into an existing timecode system. There's no jamming this with other things as far as I'm aware, so it's not really made for those types of workflows. So it's good, it's just very specific in what it can do. Third thing, the microphone's maximum sound pressure level is 128 dB SPL. What that means, if you have no idea what I'm talking about, that's plenty of headroom, that's plenty of dynamic range for dialogue recordings in most cases. If you're recording opera singers that are incredibly loud, or air shows or motorsports, it might not be loud and it might not be able to capture that without clipping. So just be aware of that if you're going to do some more extreme kind of edge use case things. This may not be enough, but for dialogue, you shouldn't have any issues with clipping. Number 4. It can also evidently be used via USB to a computer or phone, the actual recorder itself. However, it didn't work with my Mac, and I don't know if I did something wrong or a future update's going to take care of that, but as of right now, when I hooked this up to my Mac didn't see anything. So I guess I'll need to do an update, maybe in a comment down below as that updates. All right, that's how it sounds. You've heard how it sounds. The kit's available from PicoGear in 3 different configurations. There's a starter kit with a single PicoMic 3 Pro and the PicoRecorder. There's a creator kit with a pair of PicoMic 3 Pros and the recorder, or there's a Pro production kit with the full set of 6 PicoMic 3 Pros plus the receiver. Those are priced at $349, $399, and $619 US. You can also buy a single PicoMic 3 Pro transmitter for $80 and add it to your PicoRecorder kit. So you can grow the kit over time if you need to do that. So my take, this is a great option for a lot of creators. 2.4 gigahertz wireless is great for creators that aren't going to be operating, for example, at a stadium where there's a professional sporting event and there are broadcast teams and all sorts of other teams there doing stuff. But for creators, this is an amazing kit with 6 channels of wireless audio plus 2 additional wired inputs, plus a stereo mix, all on a tiny little easy-to-use recorder. It's pretty impressive. If you need something to operate, it's very simple to operate. I will just say I'm impressed. PicoGear, nice job on this. If it fits your workflow, I think this is I can recommend it. So with that, get out there, make some great sound, and we'll talk to you again soon.